Hello and welcome to another episode of the EXP Share podcast. My name is Matt. With me, as always, my friend Will. Will, how you doing today, man?
Doing great. Pokemon Day, Pokemon Week. So very excited. Very excited to talk Pokemon. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while actually. It's been a couple weeks, so I'm happy we're back here recording. We're talking about something we love. We got a lot of good stuff to get into today. We're going to be talking about obviously Pokemon Day, all the announcements that went into that, the new game, the new app, which I have my thoughts about, but we'll get into that a little bit later on today. And then something really exciting is going on in Japan. Temporal Forces already released. There's already a bunch of deck lists out there that are winning games, new archetypes that we're going to be able to play here in the next month or so. We still have quite a ways, which is really unfortunate. And then, of course, the end of today's podcast, we're going to be talking about our favorite game, America's nerdiest game, Blaine's Quiz. And today is my turn to guess. I'm pretty excited about that. So, with all that being said, Will, what'd you do on Pokemon Day?
We had an event at our local spot here, Victory Point Cafe. Shout out Victory
Mm-hmm.
Point. And it was GLC. You don't get often enough get time to play. Play a lot of GLC, and I got my ass kicked. I haven't really played against anyone other than you or our small crew. So I played
Yeah.
against a variety of decks. Played against a fighting deck that just didn't let me evolve, and I got my butt kicked. I actually played against a really back and forth game. It was down to one prize at the very end, a colorless deck, and he had his big attacker was Snorlax, who had
Yep.
a luxurious cape attached to him, and he
Yep.
rolled double heads to stay awake
Of course.
to
Ah,
two hit KO my Wailord, and my Wailord could not one hit KO a Snorlax with a cape. So if he hadn't rolled the two heads to stay awake, I would have wouldn't gotten that win. But it's a fun day. GLC is always fun, and it was a really good day to celebrate Pokemon Day, and of course we had a bunch of news out of Pokemon Day too. So
yeah, we got a bunch of good stuff going on. I had every intention of joining you guys yesterday, but I was just so tired after work. It just didn't work out. But we're not here to talk about my terrible, exhausting job. We're here to talk about Pokemon. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. As we talked about earlier, Pokemon Day, a lot of cool announcements. I think the first one we're going to discuss today is going to be the new app, Pokemon TCG Pocket. I got my own opinions about this thing. Excuse me. I got my own opinions about this thing. I know our group is pretty excited about it. We're looking forward to it. To me, how do I put this? PTCGL, we already know is not a good platform.
yeah.
I already know it's not a good client. It's not. There's a lot of issues with it. But I'm wondering, like, is this gonna be some kind of replacement in a couple years where this app takes off and PTCGL is just not doing anything? Like, is this Big Brother coming in and saying, "Hey, like, we got to get this thing fixed and replaced. This is too valuable. Too." I don't understand what the point was here because it seems kind of a bit of a conflict, doesn't it?
No, definitely. It is confusing. It is
Yeah.
definitely giving mixed signals to the Pokemon TCG player base. But I think ultimately, um, the app, like you said, is just fundamentally not there. It's not going to bring in new fans. I think the app really is
Hmm.
for people who are fans of the paper product. It gives them the option to, when they don't have the time or they don't have the people to play with, they can get in, get games in, get reps in, and practice for the TCG. But I think the paper TCG is as popular as it's ever been. The
Yeah.
tournaments are growing. The TCG is not going anywhere. The paper TCG is not going anywhere. Um, and I think it's really in a healthy place. But the digital version of it, I think, is just not helping the product sort of expand the player base. It's not really. I don't know if it's really even built for that, because if you just translate one to one the paper TCG game into an app, these games take 25, 30 minutes. You're not going to play it on the bus ride or subway into work or whatever. It's not a casual pick up and play game. I think this product, they're pitching it as a very casual pick up and play, the equivalent of like Pokemon Go. It's this like gateway drug to get people into Pokemon. And
Mm.
um, so it's going to have streamlined cards, streamlined rule sets. I think, we don't know everything about what's happening with it yet, but we've seen a couple cards that say like there's an energy zone. I think If you've ever played
Yeah.
Hearthstone or Marvel Snap, every turn your energy supply kind of just grows. Like turn one, you have one energy always. Turn two, you always have access to two energies in Marvel Snap. Turn three, you always have
Mm.
access to three. So like as your turns go, you have access to bigger and more powerful attacks. You're not dependent on just drawing into that energy. I'm sort of guessing, but it's probably something like that where if you just don't draw energy some games, you are out of luck, you get donked and the game's over. I think it's trying to balance that stuff out, make the games really quick, and make them really easy to understand for brand new players. I do think that ultimately it could be a conflict if this app does kick off. It does do what it's meant to do, which is attract new players. If it attracts new players, then there is a conflict because you have new players who understand this new rule base, who are really happy with the way it plays um, online, if that's what happens, and then they try to use it as a gateway into the real TCG, and they find that it's way more complicated. The cards are way more powerful. They have way more HP. There's a lot more finicky stuff going on. So, yeah, I think long run, I don't know what the plan is, if they plan to like merge the things or just have a completely different format. We have expanded, I guess, which no one really plays anymore. We have standard, we have GLC. Could this just be like a new format that lives alongside? They call it the pocket format or the whatever format.
Mm.
And I could see them printing the cards that exist in the digital realm also in paper and maybe having a different format or something like that. But like I said, I mean the current TCG is really healthy. I don't see the standard format going away. It's just if this app kicks off, like yeah, that's what maybe there'll be some discussions about that in the future. But right now, I think it's just like build a healthy, casual gateway. TCG Live is not that. It's kind of a broken app. They want more control, probably hands-on control because it's creatures. It's the Pokemon Company Japan. It's DNA, who they've worked with closely on other apps like Pokemon Masters, which is doing really well. So, uh, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, but could lead to confusion in the future.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat. I kind of understand what they're trying to do, right? Here's a very casual setting. You can come in and play. It's not sweaty and thick and nasty like you might get on PTCGL. Certainly if you're trying to get the ladder. And that's good. That's fun. That expands the game. It expands the fan base. And as you mentioned before, this might be a way for more casual players to kind of dip their toes in the water and see if they want to enter something a little more competitive, which is of course the standard format.
Mm.
I think the main issue I have with this is you already gave us a client that isn't very good in PTCGL. I'm not the biggest hater in the world of PTCGL, but it has its flaws, and there's no doubt about it.
Mm.
The PTCGO, I would still argue, was um, maybe not as. I'm just going to go and say it. It was a better client. It was just better and just better. It was older, but it still did the things you
Mm.
wanted to do. I mean, we barely got the battle log like what a week ago or something
Yeah.
like that. Like, why did that have to take what 2 years or something to implement? So, I mean, it's either PTCGL. This is becoming a PTCGL rant at this point, but it's either they don't have a very large team or the resources. Obviously, there's no paid anything in PTCGL. Everything is going to be free. So as a result, you're not driving in any revenue, but Pokemon doesn't have a problem with that. We all know that. That's for sure. I don't fully understand where they were going with this. So I'm excited for the future. We'll see what happens about it, or with it, I should say. I Will I download it? Yeah, I'll download it. I'll play a little bit. The art I think looks amazing. That in-depth 3D immersive
Mm.
feature that they have in the app looks really, really cool. Um, Here's a little bet for you. Does it actually get released this year? Because I believe this said it's going to be released in 2024.
Yeah, I think for sure. The Pokemon Company, for the most part, I can't remember a time where they didn't, hit their release dates. Um,
Pokemon Sleep, that thing got delayed
uh,
forever. I mean, no one
yeah,
cares about it,
yeah.
but
Does anyone
still.
care about Pokemon Sleep? I think this is a flagship product. I mean, if you look at the percentage of time it took up in the Pokemon Day event, it was like a third or a fourth of the entire total time was
Hmm.
dedicated to this. I think they, when it's this much of a fanfare they're making for it, I think it would be kind of egg on their face if they didn't get it out this year.
Hmm.
Also, there's not really any major Pokemon release that's coming this year. We don't have a mainline game. We don't have remake. The final stuff that we'll talk about from Pokemon Day announcement is 2025. So yeah, no, this game is coming out this year for sure. I think I'm pretty confident in the game coming out this year. But
I hope so. I hope so.
my last kind of note on it is, I get a lot of the grumbling. I get that, like, hey, you're dedicating all this new money and new resources to an app that's very similar, it seems. It's Pokemon card related app, and TCG Live isn't even working properly yet. The PTCGO had the expanded format. You can play GOC
Hmm.
on there. We don't even have expanded cards, but it's crashing all the time. We just only got the game log. I get all that, but I think um, PTCG Live ultimately, like, um, you can ask yourself the question, like, why does PTCG Live exist? Like, what is its purpose? It's not revenue. It's not really, I don't think it expands the player base, because in order to get points, to get access, you're already buying cards. So it's people who
Yeah.
basically are already invested in Pokemon, into Pokemon. They're already fans. They're already have paid for the product. This is like a secondary channel. And I think, the purpose of PTCG Live is to give players uh, just an extra avenue to practice, an extra place to play. Just keep them invested when they can't always go to events. You have your weekly local, but in between weekly locals, you can get some practice in. You can stay up to date. Um, and this new app is just, expanding player base. It's a new thing. It's casual. um, I think the one major flaw of Pokemon trading cards, which I really don't like, is how sweaty it can be, how
Hmm.
not friendly it can be to new players. I think it's a lot of guys, a lot of dudes just playing really hardcore Pokemon.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think if
yeah.
they have something new and fresh and light that will be more welcoming to people, I think Pokemon Go expanded uh, or brought Pokemon back to a whole new generation of players, and brought back, my wife was never into Pokemon, but she kind of got into Pokemon Go. And I think this could be something very similar. So, yeah, I mean, I just don't think yeah, like, this app is not meant to compete with PCTG Live. It's not, it's just not for the same people. And even though Live stinks, I think for the most part it does what it needs to do, which is, you can practice
Yeah.
standard games. It's not completely broken. When it first came out, you couldn't even play like Gardevoir or whatever, because like it would
Hmm.
crash every time you tried to play Gardevoir. That's crazy. It's, at least playable now. It's not crashing for the most part, and you can practice standard and get your reps in. Um, I'm not saying it's perfect. I hopefully ultimately expanded will get there, and other things will get there, but um, I think they're just different products, and you shouldn't really be thinking about it that way. I saw one person comparing it to, did you ever play the Game Boy game, uh, the Pokemon card
Ah,
Game Boy
yeah,
game?
yeah.
So that
They
was like its
actually
own,
released on the Switch, so anyone
yeah.
can play it actually right now. Yeah, super
I
fun game.
I actually never played it, but I think it was a good comparison, because that wasn't exactly a one-to-one, that wasn't the standard format. It was kind of its own format for the game. It was like a one-off little thing that was its own bubble of cards and had its own story, and you could play it. And it was like, it gave you a taste for Pokemon cards, but it wasn't exactly like a one-to-one
Mm.
correlation. I think it's the same thing. It's not going to be an exact correlation one-to-one to the physical in-person trading cards, but it's going to get people hooked, and it's going to get people addicted.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, what's the MO, right? Like, we want you to just get a taste, and then
Yeah.
go buy a booster pack, and then go buy an ETB, and all of a sudden, you're like you and me doing podcasts on a Wednesday at 7 o'clock. So it happens, right? That's kind of the idea. That's the formula. It's just get them in, have them spend a little money for a couple years, and then when they're ready to move on to something else, they will, and we've made their money. So, it's a
And
pretty
I think,
clever scheme. Oh god.
no, sorry, I think it's going to be actually a big revenue stream too, because I think, they'll give you two free packs a day. They'll be getting the taste, but I think,
Hmm.
like a lot of other DNA games, it's going to be a gotcha game. You're going to be able to
Yeah.
pay money in that app, unlike Live. So if it does pop off, it's also just another revenue stream. And hey, maybe that means they'll invest more back into us, into our, have more money to spread around to the card game.
Well, we can only hope.
Uh,
But that being said, we got one other announcement, one big announcement that came out of Pokemon Day, and that is Pokemon Legends ZA, which is a remake of the X and Y games, which I never played. I stopped playing on Diamond and Pearl. I believe this is a generation afterwards. But I know that you played, and then you played X and Y, and you're really excited about this. I don't really have a ton to say about it. The Legends Arceus game was a fantastic game. I really enjoyed that game. If my wife also played, that was one of the games that kind of got her into things.
mhm.
She found it a little too difficult, admittedly. I think it was the Arcanine fight that really just did her in. She did not enjoy that fight at all. But um, we got a new Legends game, and that's something we've been asking about, and we've been, waiting for this announcement. Now it is still a year away. That's completely fine. I don't have any issue with that, so long as it's a good game. But what are you expecting out of this? I know we got some stuff about megas coming in, and we got some potential implications for the TCG. But initial thoughts, what were you thinking when you first saw the trailer?
So, I mean, I think a lot of people have been talking about, remakes of Gen 5 or Gen 2. I guess those are the games that have not had remakes for the longest amount of time.
Mm,
Um, so this caught me by surprise. I don't think anyone expected X or Y or the Kalos region. Um, I gonna be honest, I don't have the best memories of the Kalos region. I think X and Y was basically our first foray into 3D, right? Yeah, it was our first real
I
foray
think
into
so.
3D. Black and White was the
Yeah.
last kind of sprite-based game. X and Y was the first foray into 3D, and I think it was a rough transition, if I'm going to be honest. I remember it was one of the smallest Pokédexes. I think it had like 70 or 80 new Pokemon. Um, and it just didn't feel like they hit that transition running. It really, and that's fine. It's taken them a while now, but so and no fond memories of X or Y, but megas are interesting. Like you said, has an interesting implication for the trading card games, but it also just has an interesting implications for brand new Pokemon designs, or some of your old favorites could get new evolutions, and that's really exciting.
Hmm.
I think there's gonna be a lot of you know fun discussions of which ones, which favorites are gonna get their evolutions. Of course, I'm sure Charizard is gonna get another mega evolution because Charizard's the bread
Jeez.
and butter Pokemon who gets
Yeah, yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Um, Mewtwo, probably be another Mewtwo because there was a Mewtwo X, a Mewtwo Y. There'll be a Mewtwo Z. Um, so yeah, I mean, again, that's all interesting. But I think the most interesting thing to me is this is kind of the first offshoot franchise that's getting a sequel, if that makes sense. So like Legends, the Legends Arceus game, they've done like Let's Go. That was kind of a new, different thing where they were trying to
Yeah.
copy stuff from Pokemon Go. That never got a sequel. I'm trying to think of other mechanics. I mean, I guess they were just straight remakes.
Oh, I mean,
But
would
this
you
is
consider like Stadium? I mean, because I think there was
okay.
Stadium 1 and
Yeah,
2, maybe even
Stadium 1 and
3.
2. There's
Did they
not
make
been
a
a
second
3.
pinball game? I don't remember if there was a second pinball game or not.
Mm-mm. So
I
I mean,
don't
okay,
know.
maybe I'm over speaking. There have been a couple sequels. There was Stadium 1 and 2, and then they did Coliseum, which is sort of like a spiritual successor to the Stadium
Yes,
games.
yes.
Um, and Snap, I guess, finally just got a sequel, Pokemon Snap,
20 years later. Yeah,
20 years later. But um, Legends kind of feels like one of those mainline offshoots, which is, those
yeah.
are even more spin-offs. And this is the first time they're doing that. But to me, what's interesting is what does Legends mean as a subtitle? Because I enjoyed
Mm-hmm.
Legends incredibly, but if Legends means like wide open world, um, I would say Legends is probably one of the first true open world Pokemon games. Even though it wasn't, there was like separate area zones that you had to
Yeah.
load in out of.
Yeah.
It was also a game that didn't really focus on battling. There was no straight like true battling like you expect in a mainline Pokemon game. There were battles, but the mechanics were very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
Does that same mechanic pass over, or are they going to try to re-implement, full blown battle mechanics with hold items and with abilities? I don't think there were abilities in Legend
Mm,
Arceus.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Can't
they
remember.
weren't. They were not abilities. Like so, the mechanics were much more pared down. Um, and then also Legends Arceus was set in the past. These were like prehistoric, or like before the times of the actual region. But now we're in a city, and it seems like Nintendo of America tweeted that this entire game takes place in Lumio City. This is like GTA Pokemon. The entire game is in a city, which is the exact opposite of sort of what I expect from Legends Arceus, which is wide open spaces, just catching. The only thing you're doing is walking around catching Pokemon. You're just exploring big, wide open spaces, throwing Pokemon at people, like hiding in bushes, throwing balls at Pokemon and catching them from behind, not necessarily battling too much. And if it's like GTA Pokemon, that seems completely different from what I expect from a Legends game.
Hmm.
You know, or you like you're sneaking through the streets and you're still like you don't expect there to be wild Pokemon, too many wild Pokemon in a city environment. And
Yeah,
the
yeah.
the loop of Legends Arceus was just catch as many as you can, and then you need to fill out your notebook and like catch 10 of these, Pokemon, and you need to like do all these little tasks by catching, mostly by catching. And so, I guess for this to be a spiritual sequel to Legends, I don't know what carries over and like how it ends up being a spiritual sequel. I'm just
Yeah,
exceeding.
I
Sorry, no, go
no,
ahead.
I had no, I had no idea that it was actually they had made that tweet that it's just going to take place in one city. If you look at the trailer, they kind of do this Pokeball-esque thing with the tower in the center and
Mm,
everything. I'm assuming that's supposed to be like the Empire State Building or something, but I had no idea it was one city. Now I'm thinking about it. I mean, GTA I think is a good call. The Spider-Man games is kind of that same vibe, right? I can
mm,
imagine you jump into like different warehouses and things like that in the city. It sounds fun. It sounds different, but at the same time, it also sounds a bit. I mean, I don't know if I want to use this word so much because it is an open world to some degree, but it feels a bit confining. Like you're in
mm.
one city. We're so used to having eight, nine cities in video games and in Pokemon games, I should say, that you can bounce around. You have the different routes connecting all these different places. And for that not to be a thing, I think is actually a pretty big risk by Pokemon to be able to say, hey, you're going to be in one place and this is it. This is all you get. And we're going to make the most of it. So really interesting move on their part. I hope it works out. I hope it's a fun game. I'm sure it will be. If Legends Arceus is anything to go off of, what it was ZA, I believe is what it's called. Yeah, ZA is going to be a fantastic game. So I'll be buying it, no doubt about that. I'll be one of the first ones to be buying that game. I'll take a week off from work, and we'll be killing that game in 1 week. So I'm looking forward to it. And just to kind of touch on here real quick, Megas Legends Arceus had a bunch of cards that made it in, or had a bunch of Pokemon that made it into the TCG. Hisui and Guja V Star was a very, very good card. Potentially is still going to be a good card with the introduction of Mist Energy in the next rotation. But I could see it happening, right? Like you're going to get some new Pokemon, some new mechanics. And if you're getting Megas back out of this region, you have to imagine that we're going to see Megas at some point in the future. So I'm looking forward to it. I didn't play when the
Yeah,
Megas
to
were
be,
around. I'm not sure if
I
you.
didn't, I've only played for like a year, so
Uh,
I don't know the mechanics. I kind of look back
yeah.
just to try to understand what the mechanics were when Megas existed, but they seemed pretty convoluted, and I think most people did not like
Yeah.
the I think there was a mechanic
I,
where like to evolve to a mega, you had to like end your turn. You like evolve to the
yeah.
mega and just end your turn, which is kind of crazy.
It's insane, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the cost to get these things out into play was just way too high because there was also like a Spirit Link Tyranitar, Spirit Link Charizard, whatever. I
Mm.
believe it was a tool. You attach the tool, and then when you evolve, then you don't have to end your turn.
Which is
Sounds great, but like, can I get a choice spell in that thing? Can I get
yeah.
like a defiant spell? Like, what am I? I don't know. So I'm hoping that mechanic doesn't return in the same one for one kind of situation. If that's the case, no one's going to play it. The standard is just way too fast. Even if we're talking about potentially 6 months from now, Charizard is still going to be around. I don't see how Megas survive the
Yeah.
format. I just don't. So we'll
Well, I
see what
mean,
happens. We'll see what
it's a
happens.
while from now. This game won't come out until 2025, and who knows if it's like spring or fall of 2025. And I think cards usually lag behind by like 6 months or a year. So
Yeah,
yeah, we're not
about
seeing these megas for a while. But it'll be interesting to
yeah.
see how they, translate them into the game. Charizard
If they
Z.
even come, who knows? They may not even show up. We'll see. But with that being said, we're going to take a step from the far future into the more distant future. We're going to be talking about what exactly is going on in Japan. There's a bunch of new decks out there, a bunch of new archetypes. I'm super excited about Temporal Forces. I know the both of us are actually, and we were just talking about this over the weekend. We're ready. Like I am over it. Paldean Fates can go. I'm done. I just want to have the rotation come in. I know you're a little nervous about it. It's going to be okay. Don't worry. And this is get
My
these new
precious
cards out. Let's get to the.
Miraidon. My
That was one. We're not going to talk about it today. Maybe we can if we have time. But the deck that we have on screen, first major rotation, post rotation tournament took place in Japan a couple weeks ago, and I mean, who would have guessed? Lugia V Star took the whole thing paired with Chinchino. So if we scroll down here, we can actually start to see some of these deck lists.
Mm.
And yeah, Lugia is a thing. We already know that Lugia Archetypes is a great combination. It's already going to be a deck that's going to be somewhat relevant. You just need to have the right attackers. And this Minchino Chinchino line, it's doing it. It did it. It took first place in this Champions League over in Japan. So, Will, what gets you excited about this deck list? Do you like Lugia? When it first came out, I played it, and it was a lot of
I
fun. But
I mean, I
what are your
guess
thoughts?
so Lugia was like right around the time that I was like starting to become interested in Pokemon. I hadn't even built my first meta deck, but that was the BDIF. Everyone was playing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was when it was still being played with the single strike
Amazing
energy.
rares.
Oh wait,
Oh no! Oh, wait, it might have been before. Oh, you know what? Yeah, maybe when it first got
no, when it
introduced.
first came out, it was amazing rares, right?
It
Yeah.
was amazing rares, yeah, because we still had all those crazy special energy in the format. Single strike was kind of the next iteration of Lugia.
Okay, so I mean, I just
Yeah.
remember that it was like uh, sweeping every regional. Everyone was playing it. You know, you look at the top eight, it was like six or seven Lugias in the top eight. And
Hmm.
so I think I was just kind of turned off by that. I don't necessarily want to be a bandwagon jumper. And so
Yeah.
I think I had some bad just vibes from Lugia from the beginning because it just felt too powerful. I think once rotation hit it and it kind of lost some of those pieces, it became a bit more interesting, but I still, never it never just clicked with me. I don't know what it is about it. But now that it seems like an underdog, I feel like it had everything torn away from it. It had to be torn down to the absolute bare bones, and now it's sort of starting
Hmm.
to somewhat come back. It's definitely interesting to me, and also I just like the idea of using single prize attackers. I like that
Yes.
basically this entire deck is single prize attackers now. Lugia is really just there to set up. You're not really
Hmm.
attacking with it. You can if you need to, but it's there to set up your Archeops. It's there to, attack at the very end if you need to. But Chinchino, he's the guy. He's
Yeah.
the, really cool guy. And I like that. I mean, it's a single prize attacker, not that much HP, like 110. He's very
Yeah.
frail, but
Yeah.
you get enough special energy cards on him, and he's doing basically unlimited numbers. What is it, like 70 times the number of special energy cards attached to him?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's an important thing here, right? Like double turbo counts as one energy
Yes, it's
card.
energy
So that's
cards, not
yes, energy
energy.
card. I've had so many people. I've seen a lot of people on like YouTube comments and stuff like that saying like, "Oh my God, couple double turbo, you're knocking everything out. Like you're doing 100 damage. Like you got to
Yeah.
read that card to really understand what you're doing."
Yeah,
But
because it
I think
actually,
the
a double turbo, it counts as one energy card, but you lose the
yeah
20. So it's really just 50 for the double turbo.
yeah. So
Um,
ideally, you're probably using throwing a V guard at therapeutic. Maybe not the therapeutic. You're probably only playing one of those, but you're trying to use other kind of energy for that. I would imagine the double turbos more of in a pinch, maybe even better suited for Snorlax. But what I think is really cool about this deck, and if you look at the way that these deck lists are currently being presented at this time, and this is a current build, this is just from just yesterday. Who are your basic Pokemon here? You're going to start with the Lugia, Minchino, or Snorlax, or potentially Luminion. But what's really cool about this is that Minchino has Call for Family on it.
mm,
Lets you get two basic Pokemon. So, okay,
mhm.
maybe you just open with the Chinchino, you can't do anything else. It's fine. Throw an energy card on it, Call for Family, and you're off and running. This deck list doesn't play Buddy Poffin. It plays a couple Great Balls. It plays some capture. It was Aroma Incense, I think is what it's called. I can't remember the name of that
Yeah,
card in
I think the
particular.
problem is there's very few like good balls in format right now. So yeah, it plays
Yeah,
those capturing
yeah.
aromas, which is a flip. It plays this one's playing great balls. I don't remember what the one that won um, the Champions League played, but it has ultra balls, great balls, capturing aromas, and like the ace spec that it plays is Master Ball, which is that is
Oh
what
man.
the
Yeah.
Champion League winning deck's ace spec was Master Ball because it just needs more good ball search and yeah, just that one extra like good ball search really matters. Um, Lugia lost Professor Burnett, which is really important to immediately
Yeah,
get your Archeops into the discard. So you're really just dependent on getting those Archeops in hands and then like ultra balling them away or read the wind. If you read the wind, you can discard a card and draw three with your Lugia. So
right.
like those are the only ways you get the Archeops in the discard pile: Ultra Ball or read the wind.
Yeah, I mean, this deck list here, and I'm looking at the list from the Champions League over in Japan here. They are playing one Jock, and by the way, everyone calls that Jack. I don't know why. Like, get a little culture. It's Jock. Figure it out, folks. Anyway, um, so they play one Jock. That lets you get two evolution cards. So hypothetically, first turn going second, you could potentially run into that, Ultra Ball those things away, and you're kind of
Mm.
set up after that. Obviously, you still need to get everything out with the Summoning Star and Lugia V Star, but regardless, the point I'm trying to make is it may not be as good as it was during its amazing rare days, but I think it's a legitimate contender. It obviously won the first major tournament post rotation, so I think it's there. It's legit. I was kind of debating playing it. I have all the pieces already, of course. Anything that hasn't been released yet, everything's already there. I even have like an old copy of Master Ball that I found randomly as some, LGS, years ago, and it's all kind of there. So I'm excited about it. When Archeops first came out, Archeops, I don't know, whatever it is. I was actually a little upset with this card. I was one of those salty Pokemon players. Of like, this card should have been like a Radiant card. They were still printing Radiants at that time, because the ability was just so good.
Mm.
Nowadays, obviously, as you mentioned before, things have been really stripped down. It had to build itself back up in a way that I think is still meta viable, but at the same time, it isn't like this overly broken, I'm just going to run you over every game card. So, Lugia, honestly, I'm happy with where it's at now. I think the Chinchino Minchino thing is really, really cool. The Snorlax in there is really, really cool. It's a pretty nice deck list. I think it's really exciting. I'm happy to have this deck back, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's healthy for the format. I think
Yes.
it's really cool. It's balanced. I mean, these Minchinos are, frail and really, I mean, because it's card specifically, to KO a Charizard, you need five of these energies on that Minchino, and then when it goes down, those energies are gone.
Yeah.
There's no way to recycle special energies right now, so you really got to be careful and keep a close eye on how many energies you're discarding or you're losing. So I think it's a very, very balanced card. It doesn't feel broken, and yeah, just an interesting spot in the meta right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Charizard earlier. I think we can go ahead and move on to that new set of cards. Charizard doesn't lose a lot in rotation. We already know that it's going to pretty much hold on to everything it needs. But the big difference right now going on in Japan is people have kind of stepped away from that Pidgeot line and they're really focusing on Bibarel. So if you're looking at what we have here on the screen for those listening at home and everywhere around the world, we have kind of a mixture. We have Bibarel, we got Pidgeot. Some lists have been played Bibarel and Pidgeot. So 1-1 of Pidgeot.
That's crazy.
That's a little, yeah, that's a little risky if you ask me, but I get it. I understand where they're going for. I think the main reason you're going to be playing Bibs over the Pidgeot, for a couple different reasons, obviously, right? So one, Iona proof. If you got Iona at the beginning of the game and they knock out your Pidgeot with a Roaring Moon or something like that, you're in a pretty good place to recover some cards and hopefully be able to respond to those attacks. But in addition to that, you have Greninja canceling clone all over the place in Japan, and that's going to really kill your Pidgeys and your Charmanders and things. Bidoof already has the built-in bench barrier, so you don't have to really worry about that. And plus, if you get Manaphy out there, you should be okay, so long as they don't go ahead and get that canceling clone off. That being said, I still think Pidgeot's a better play.
I
I've been playing
agree.
that.
I
Yeah,
100% think it's better. I don't know
yeah,
why. I mean, I think even before rotation, I think Japan always had a love affair with the Bibarel Charizard line. I think if you paid attention before, there were plenty of people trying to make this happen. I think TM Evolution also, ever since that
mm,
card came out, people have really tried to make it work. Turn one, you can have your Bibarels, and you can, who are sort of Greninja proof just because they have 120 HP. You can have your
yeah.
Charmanders I mean, Charmeleons, there's like 100 HP Charmeleon now. I think there's also a Charmeleon with Bench Barrier, or,
Yeah, the Flame Veil or something like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So I guess, TM Evolution, and you can basically be out of Greninja range on turn one, but No, I don't know what it is. I think it's just not as good. I guess the only other benefit is, you don't really have two prize liabilities on your bench. 280 is just an
Sure.
easier number to hit than 330, and that's one of the benefits of Charizard.
Yeah.
Um, but I think Pidgeot is just that card. It's too good a card, and there's no path in format anymore. So
Yeah.
you can't even path Iono to one or whatever and prevent them from, drawing. I think for the most part, if you have a Pidgeot on your bench and you also have a Charizard fully ready to go, Charizard EX on the bench as well, like if you choose to get the Pidgeot instead of the Charizard, you're just facing, an even more powered up Charizard next turn that can do 60 more damage because you took two more prizes or whatever. Like, I
Yeah.
think at that end game stage, if the person has set up well and has a second backup attacker, like you're not bossing up that Pidgeot. You just can't afford to. You got to boss up the Charizard instead, and it's
Right.
just yeah, it's just that deck. I think Bibarel is fake. I think Bibarel is fraudulent.
Yeah, I mean, again, I kind of get what they're going for, and I think this top deck list is actually playing a 3-2 line, so that's a lot of space that you're taking up. Um, yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah,
think if I'm going to continue to play the deck, I think it's a lot of fun. It's very streamlined, so that's kind of makes things a little bit easier. I have another list that I'm excited about that we'll talk about later on in today's episode. But one interesting add on this list, and I don't see it on any of the other lists that we're looking down on, the gouging flames, the
yeah, gouging
Entei,
fire. Yeah, gouging
whatever
fire.
it is. I would have to imagine the only reason behind that card being included in the list, aside from doing 260 for 3 energy, I mean, Vulpix V-Star doesn't have an ability, so it can kind of
Mm,
break through that. I mean, is that the
I think
reason?
that's
That's the only thing I
huge.
could think of.
I think that's huge,
Yeah,
and I think also just turn one and two, or even turn three,
swinging.
Charizard is only doing 180, or he's
Yeah,
only
yeah.
so those first few turns you can knock out Roaring Moon, you can knock out just any most basic EXs and Vs at 220, 230 HP. You can hit those numbers, and Charizard doesn't. So early game, Gouging Fire just hits those bigger numbers. I mean, this is an interesting. I mean, just I've never seen a list. This list is playing Cape, which is weird. I feel like Charizard's already big enough. That's kind of crazy. I
Yeah,
actually think, and this
I
deck
wouldn't
down here
play
is,
Cape.
is playing the catcher or whatever. I don't know what it's called. The
Yeah, no maximum belt, right?
Yeah, I think Maximum Belt is also that card because even if you don't play Gouging Fire, you slap on a Maximum Belt and 180 plus 50, you're doing the 230 numbers that you need to be hitting
Mm.
to get most of the basic EXs and Vs in the format right now. Um, yeah, so I mean, Charizard basically loses zero and gain stuff. So you replace your VIPs with Buddy Poppins. You have the new cards like Gouging Fire. You have the new Ace Specs, which I think are all going to be great. Like as you can see, they're trying a bunch of different things here. Um, uh, Most of them probably will work well. And Path is gone, so that's another counter that used to hurt Charizard a little bit. Um, this deck is just going to continue to be great, and has more interesting pieces that you can kind of mix in. You can throw in the one of gouging, the one of cards, and yeah, I mean, I think there's not much more else to say about Charizard. It has been that kind of BDIF, and I think will continue to be that BDIF.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I'm gonna keep playing it. I'm gonna get the pieces. Here's a little side conversation for you. A reverse hollow buddy poppin. How much is that gonna go for? Are we talking like $4 or $5 a copy? Like, what do you
I
think it's
don't
gonna
think
be?
so. I mean, VIP passes, I guess, did get up there at the
No, what
end.
is it now? I mean, we're near the end of
It's
rotation,
yeah,
but
so
I
it's
guess
probably gone down, but I think it got to
yeah,
like $3 or $4. Um, just regular VIP passes, not even
yeah,
reverse.
yeah.
Um,
I'm curious now. So
are
it's
Buddy
currently
Poppins?
going for $1.16, $1.23, 328 the reverse hollow. And if we're just gonna go back 6 months, at its peak, a reverse hollow was nearly $8
Oh
back in
my
November.
God.
Wow. So I mean,
Are Buddy Poppins rares? Are they rares?
I don't know. I would love to know. And actually, in English, it's called Buddy Buddy
Oh
Poffin.
yes, I saw
Like,
that. The translation finally came out. Buddy Buddy Poppin. I like the name. I do like the
I do
name.
too. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's actually a lot of fun. Let me see if can I zoom in on this. I can. It's an uncommon, so
So
it should be
yeah, it should be
everywhere.
fine. I think we're gonna be good.
Yeah, because I'm gonna probably get at least a dozen of those bad boys.
So there's no way,
I
yeah, there's
like
no way
to.
it'll be expensive as VIP pass, and
Yeah,
especially at first because they'll be everywhere and it's not going to be an older set. So
yeah.
just wait till they
Well, regardless.
wait till
Oh,
they
sorry.
print
Go
the
ahead.
gold one in the next set. They'll print a gold buddy buddy pop, and then you can spend your five
I
bucks
won't be
to max
touching that.
for max
Ugh,
rarity.
that's way too much. I mean, have they ever made a gold uncommon card before? Maybe like an energy. I can't
I
imagine anything else, but who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
Um,
Um,
yeah. Well, what do you want to talk about next? We got a bunch of different stuff we can talk about here.
well, we
A
can
bunch of.
just yeah. Which decks are you interested in? Just giving a quick run through to talk about for the
I
post
mean,
rotation format.
for me, there's two that really pop off in my mind. That's gonna be the Future Box, specifically the Iron Hands Super Streamline deck, and then of
Mm,
course what I'm. Well, I think I heard it somewhere on YouTube, but Dino Box, Ancient Box, whatever. I like
yeah,
Dino Box. I think
I like
that's cool.
Dinobox
But
too.
yeah, that I've already had. I got a proxy. I've been ordering pieces for it. It's actually right in front of me on my table over there. It's built and ready to go. I just need to get those regular cards in.
I mean,
Um,
basically, that entire deck is all temporal forces, right? How do you have anything built? It's like 40% of it is the future card. I mean, the
Yeah,
ancient cards,
it's
right?
about half. Yeah, but I mean things like Earthen Vessel already available to you. Professor Sada is already available to you. The dark patches and the counter catchers and all that stuff. It's already there. So um, that's a really cool deck, and I'm really excited about it. Can you actually pull it up here on the screen for
Yeah, let me
anyone who may be
see.
watching here?
Is this it?
Um,
No, this is
I
not
think
it.
what's really cool about this deck is one. Obviously, it's gonna
Oh,
be single prizers. Oh, that's future there. That's chin.
ta-da.
It's around there somewhere.
I lost it. Maybe I didn't pull it. Maybe I didn't pull it up. Um, no, I didn't. Let me
That's all
quick
right. Yeah, you can just
quickly
jump
just
into the
jump up
talk
in
track.
and
Yeah, no one's seeing this. No one's seeing my work behind the scenes here. Ancient Box, super cool deck. I'm really excited about it. I think for a couple different reasons. I've been wanting to play like a single prize deck for quite some time. I just haven't really found anything that kind of fit my groove, if you will.
Mm,
But two, I little boy at heart. I like dinosaurs. I like these kind of things. And there's dragons and dinosaurs and ancient like that just kind of feeds into that again, that 10-year-old Matt inside of me. It's still very much there. I think the biggest thing that's going to hold this deck back, and I don't know if it's even going to be good upon release, damage output is not great. It's very little. I was just kind of going through some hands on my own, pretending I'm playing Charizard EX or whatever. I was losing games. It was not
really, I
pretty.
think what's
Yeah.
really interesting is, I mean, I think it caps out so that, uh, you're really at the end of the game, you're dependent on your Roaring Moons, your single prize Roaring Moons,
Yes.
which do,
Right.
what is it, 20 or 10 damage for every ancient card in your discard. So
Right.
I think there's a max of like literally 29. You can have 29 ancient cards in your discard. If every other ancient card is in
Hmm.
your discard except for one Roaring Moon, I think you have 29 cards, which 290 damage. I think for a single prizer, um, Pokemon for only two energy, 290 damage is, that's killing every V Star. That's killing every,
Hmm.
other than Charizard, who of course just, yeah, you're just,
Everyone two
you,
hits him. It doesn't
yeah,
matter.
you can't
Yeah.
really, you can't one hit KO him. But he's a single prizer, like 290 is really good. Of course, that's only happening at the very end of the game. That's only once you've really gotten down to the last few cards. But even before that, you can get in the 200s. I saw some games. I had Tricky Jim played some games on stream. He was getting those two. He was killing Goldengos. He was getting to
Mm,
260, and not like the last turn of the game. Like the second to last turn of the game, he was getting to 260 and
mm.
killing some Goldengos. And I think if you're able to, even if you're falling behind, you counter catch your things up, you get those numbers, and you're taking two prizes, and you catch up in that prize trade because they're only taking one every turn.
Mhm.
Um, I think the deck can keep up. I do. I think the main problem with this deck, as with any deck, I think the original Roaring Moon deck before it started doing well recently, um, was everyone thought you had to play four Sadas, and when you were playing four Sadas, you couldn't do other supporters. You can't
Right.
disrupt hands, you can't boss, you can't. And I think this deck is also you're gonna be playing Sada almost every single turn, and then you lose the ability to disrupt your opponent. And without disruption, you don't necessarily have that extra option of trying to catch up in the prize trade. Um, but I guess you're just because there aren't that many single prize, there aren't that many single prize decks in format. So I guess your way
Yeah,
of catching up in the prize trade is, hey, you got to take six prizes, and I hopefully are, can do it in three or four attacks, because I'm going to take
yeah, yeah.
two prizes eventually. So um, it's interesting. I mean, we'll see. We'll see if it can keep up. But I think it looks set to maybe, you know, maybe. I mean, I think there were even times I really liked, and I had it built still, but it just couldn't quite keep up. Was the Wings of Union, which is I think also built off of like
Yeah.
the Mad Party type,
Hmm.
thing, which Mad Party I think in its day won regionals and stuff.
It
Wings
did.
of
Yeah.
Union never Wings of Union never did, but I think this is a very similar thing, and I think as they print more ancient cards, um, maybe it'll get there. Also, I mean, I didn't realize this. Look at this card. Have you seen this? Some Miraidons have been playing this card. Cobalion. It does 30 more damage to dark
Dark types.
Pokemon. So
I
that's pretty cool.
literally just got my reverse hollow copy in the mail today. So yeah, he's already in the deck. He's ready to go. So, like I said, I'm super excited about it. But I kind of get the feeling that this will be one of those decks, like a Roaring Moon, like even like Guardy when it first got printed. When these cards are first printed, the archetype was first introduced. It wasn't good. It
Hmm.
took a while for us to kind of figure out what's the optimal 60. How do we make this deck win games? And I think this archetype is going to kind of fit into that category. May not be a face melter right off the bat, but maybe give another set, maybe even two, and I think it will be better because we've already seen more future cards come out from the set after Temporal Forces. Crimson Haze or something along those
Yeah.
lines. We're going to talk a little bit about that later on today. Um, but I think the big thing here is as more cards get printed, you're having access to more ancient cards. Not every single one's going to be great, obviously, but even if we get one more ancient item card, that's going to be a big deal. Even if it's halfway decent, that's 40 more damage you can add onto War and Moon, and you can play four of those every single turn. So I'm excited for the deck. Like I said, I'm gonna play it. It doesn't really matter what anyone tells me. I'm gonna play. It's gonna be a fun deck, and I'm excited for it. So we'll see how it goes. That Mischievous in there, by the way, that's starting to pop up in a few other archetypes. Like I've even seen Charizard deck lists start to play that card. So that might be a
Well,
thing.
it's
That
an
might be a thing.
ability lock, right? It's basically like a Klefki. Like, what does it do that's different
Yeah.
than a Klefki?
So if it's in the active,
Act.
I want to say if it's in the active, then it shuts down the other active's abilities. So
Hmm.
this is really good for, oh, let me promote Charizard Rare Candy. Well, there you go. You can't really use your whatever the name of that ability is,
Yeah.
Ruler, the Black Flame, or whatever it is. Maybe I want to use Pidgeot as my pivot. Well, I have to retreat first and then get something else in, and then I can go ahead and use the whatever that ability is called. I'm forgetting all these abilities. Maybe I start with Greninja and I can't use concealed cards first turn. I'm just kind of stuck. I think the biggest thing here, though, is Comfy. Can't use flower selecting. So long
Hmm.
as that Mischievous is up front, Escape Rope is rotating, that could
I think
potentially
that's the
shut down their
biggest
entire
thing.
game.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
no
huge.
rope really hurts a lot of decks and
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
these kinds of cards viable. I think actually that's another reason why, unfortunately, I think stall is going to be really big in the next format.
Huge.
No
Yeah.
rope. You can push up Klefkis. I mean, not Klefkis. What's that card that EXs and rule box Pokemon can't kill? Um,
Mimikyu?
Mimikyu. So yeah,
Yeah.
the Mimikyu can't be pushed out of the active with a rope. You got a boss around it. Snorlax obviously can't rope around it. Like, um, I think stall is gonna be
Don't ever get me started.
even bigger in
I'm
the
not
next
looking
format.
forward to it. I mean, I think this is one of the decks actually plays pretty well into that. If you have that Mistress up front, you could technically shut off that block ability. And when you retreat, the ability, he's still technically in the active until you get that new Pokemon in play. So again, I think this deck's got a lot going for it. I'm gonna bling this guy out. I've decided that my standard decks, the Pokemon get blinged out, everything else doesn't. GLC, we're gonna bling those guys out top to bottom. But I'm really excited about this archetype. It's not doing like anything crazy in Japan, but it is winning. As you can see here, this top deck from just on Monday was the runner-up, and then the deck list below that was the top four. So it's doing things. It's not necessarily like taking everything home like Charizard is right now, but it's there, and I think it's only going to get better over time. So I'm really excited about this archetype. Um, That being said, this is all ancient. Let's go and jump into the future stuff next. I think we're ready to go and talk about those guys, or maybe we can talk about Chen Pao. I don't know. Where do you want to go next?
No, feature box for sure. Let's quickly, this is the other big. I mean, obviously the two big archetypes. You're finally
Hmm.
having a full future and a full. We've had some one-off ancient and future cards, but now we have full archetypes that are sort of built around these future cards and ancient cards. Um, and this is, I mean, actually, I feel like the variety of builds for Future Box is is bigger than the Ancient Box, actually. Ancient Box,
Hmm.
we're all doing the same things, but with Future Box, there are some decks built entirely around just buffing Iron Hands and just even using electric generators to, power up your Iron Hands really, really quickly. And then, of course, you have your, what are these guys called? These future Cobalions. Not
Oh,
Cobalions.
jeez.
Gosh, what is his name?
Iron Horns or something. I
Iron
don't know.
Thorns? I don't know. Whatever his name
Iron
is.
Crown. Iron Crown. I
Crown.
think that might be it.
Yes, that's right. So Iron
Yeah.
Crown buffs
Yeah.
obviously all future Pokemon by 20 damage. Um, so yeah, I mean this deck right here, I think it was actually, yeah, it's topped some events and basically just built all around getting your Iron Hands buffed. You buff it with the Iron Crowns, you buff it with your Ancient Booster Energy Capsules, which do 20 more damage, and you just generate to them 12 electric energy in this. No other types of energies, and you just you just really keep on hitting those guys hard. Um, I actually like. No one's really. Well, I've heard a couple of people talking about him, but Iron Bundle is basically rope in a Pokemon. It's the only way to
Mm-hmm.
rope. It's the only way to rope now because we don't have rope in the format. So I actually like that they included that card in here. You can obviously get it with your future whatever future
Techno Radar. Is
radar. There you go, Technical
that what
Radar.
it is? Yeah.
Yeah, all these card names. Um,
I don't know abilities apparently though, so I don't, what
So yeah,
I
you
don't
can
know.
get them. You can get your bundle out with the Techno Radar. You can rope around, Pokemon if you need to, and you just take extra prizes with your with your Iron Hands. So it's a
Yeah.
cool deck. Um, I think
Yeah. When I saw these deck, oh, sorry. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I think there's other ways to build it, but I mean, because
There
this
is. Yeah.
this deck has had success, it does look like a lot of people have really just been going straight up for the electric energy only. When I first saw Tricky Jim trying to build his, he built it with the grass one that can one hit KO Charizard. But
Virizion.
yeah, yeah, here, this guy.
That's another iron something.
I think it's Iron
Iron
Thorns.
leaves.
Iron
Iron
Leaves.
thorns.
Iron
I don't
Leaves.
know. I can look it up. Yeah, I'm actually kind of yeah, it is Iron Leaves. I'm kind of surprised that card isn't seeing more action in this deck. Maybe it doesn't need it. Maybe you can just start picking off Manaphy's and
Yeah.
Charmanders and Pidgeys and Jirachis and stuff like that, and you're okay. But
I mean, I guess if
you can see some of these.
you can buff
Hmm?
your Iron Hands though to do enough damage. If you get all four Iron Crayons out, that's an 80 damage buff.
Yeah,
And then you also attach a Future Booster Energy Capsule. That's a 100 damage buff. You bring to 20, and you can one hit KO a Miraidon or one hit KO a Chien-Pao and take three prizes. So like, yeah, I mean that's pretty scary, I guess, if you get everything going.
I mean, if you're down three prizes turn two, like that's you're knocked out of VMAX for very little effort. Like, how do you even come back from that? I don't know. So, I mean, on that point though, I think VMAXs are super dead. A three
Yes.
prize liability in the meta, post rotation, you
Well,
can't
also
afford it. You just can't
most
afford it.
VMAXs are rotate. I think almost all
Yes.
VMAXs are rotating except for just a
Yeah.
handful of them.
Yeah,
So
there's a few left, so yeah, but yeah, I think this deck list is really cool. I have to admit, I was looking at some prices online for Iron Hands. I do want to because I have one copy. I pulled one copy, just a plain old regular standard copy. I was like, do I buy three just in
yeah.
case? Just in case, because I'm assuming that post rotation card is actually going to go even higher in value, because this deck list actually looks really sick. The one kind of critical feedback I'll have for this deck, super streamlined. You know what you're trying to do. Your opponent knows what you're trying to do, and because of that, it's a bit predictable, right? Like unless
Mm.
you can find a way to play around that, I think the biggest key to making this deck successful, two keys really: the Miraidon, the baby Miraidon that accelerates the energy, and then the heavy baton that allows you to get the energy back onto your next Iron Hands. You just push that one up, maybe you attach for turn, and then you're off and running. So there's a lot of good things to say about this deck, obviously, but I just, if you can Lost Vacuum that heavy
Yeah,
baton, like, then that's
it
it,
does
right? Like
slow
you're kind of,
down. It really does
yeah.
slow down the game plan for sure.
So buy your gold Lost Vacuums while you can, because I think those are going to go up, especially with all these ace specs coming out. I have to imagine Lost Vacuum is going to blow up in value in just about
And
a month
as
here.
sick as this deck looks, I mean, I think this is now time we can look at results. I
Yep,
think the Champions League, which was sorry, the Champions League,
it's
which
summer up
was
there. There it is.
yeah, which was the biggest event. Obviously, if you're locals, you have lots of results to look at from locals, but that's not the same as looking at a 2,655 player tournament. Um, it didn't make it anywhere. Future Iron Hands. Okay, it was top 14, but I think that was as high as Future Box did.
Mm,
Um, even Great Tusk Mill did better
yeah.
than Future Hands, and I think after this Future Iron Hands, I don't think we had another one um, for a while. So it wasn't as successful as I guess people are expecting. I think obviously it's still early in a format. I think there's still lots of ways to build this deck and people maximize it. People find the right way. But for right now, I don't think it's getting the results that people were expecting. And the Dino Box, that was almost top eight. That kind of bubbled out of top eight. I
Yeah.
think this is the real deal. And I think Iron Hands or Future Box in general might not be, at least in the current iteration of it. We'll see as deck lists get a little bit more refined.
Yeah, and I think that's been a big thing, right? Like Future Box was hyped up to be this incredible thing, and it might be. It might be. I don't think it's too soon to just completely discard it off to the side and say, yeah, it's going to be Lugia, it's going to be Stall, it's going to be Zard. I still think it has a lot of potential. But I think what's interesting about this as well is there's no Miraidon. It's Iron Hands, it's Baby Miraidon, it's the Iron Crown or whatever his name is,
Yeah,
and that's kind of it. So Miraidon's kind of really fallen off, obviously without Flaffy. I think it's crazy that one energy acceleration, well, potentially two if you got two on the bench, but that one bit of energy acceleration just completely killed Miraidon, which is crazy to say because I felt like it was a card that was going to may not be like Mew was going to be good forever, but it was going to stick around for a long time. And I feel like this rotation has effectively killed it, which is again kind of crazy to say.
yeah. I mean, I think also the one big thing that Miraidon has that I think continues to be important because big basics are going to have trouble moving forward. I think Roaring Moon's going to have trouble moving forward. Without VIP Pass, you really just can't
Mm,
get established really quickly. The ones that
right.
evolve, you have your buddy poffins to get everybody out, and then you'll evolve the next turn or whatever. But big basics, you're just depending on nest ball and like kind of that's it. Um, Miraidon, obviously, his biggest benefit is you never needed a VIP pass. You have your built-in VIP pass with Miraidon's ability. Um, but I guess Future Box has everything that Miraidon offered in its own
Mm,
deck. So it has
hmm.
the Techno Radar, which is kind of its built-in big basic VIP pass because it's just
Yep.
any future Pokemon you can get out. It has the future Ace Spec, which is also energy acceleration. You can accelerate to every future Pokemon on your bench from your discard pile. So it has all the things that Miraidon had with Flaffy, with Technoradar, and it doesn't really need Miraidon anymore. I guess
Yeah.
yeah, it just Miraidon is no more. Unfortunately, like I said, my precious Miraidon that
Take you to day two, right?
yeah got me today too.
Yeah, got you today too. I mean, there's still, I think, there's still hope for it. I don't think it's completely dead yet, but certainly, it's not going to be the favorite. And that's the thing, right? This is the first major event, so of course everyone's going to be playing the new cards. No one's going to be playing some of the older. I mean, Charizard will always. It's Charizard.
Yeah,
They're always going to be playing it.
Charizard's here,
But I mean,
Artina.
yeah, that's a little bit of an older combination there. In fact, that's a way old combination. Like that was one of the first things that Giratina got paired with was Arceus way back in the day, aside from Lost Box, of course. But apparently that's a thing again. I don't know if we have time to talk about it today, but at the very least, you folks see the top 16 there from the Fukuoka. I don't know. I'm not Japanese. I do apologize, but from the Champions League in Japan. So, pretty cool stuff there. Certainly. Do you want to jump on to what do you want to do? Lost Box, Stall, Chen Pao. I'm kind of down to talk about Stall.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think we mentioned stall quickly. We can. I
Yeah,
don't think the build changes too much. I think it just keep in mind. I mean, look at the results. There are three in the top 16 here. I think it only gets stronger. Um, and I think, yeah, they get a handful of new cards in Temple Forces that just, the hand clipper, other little things that'll help disrupt more. It just gets really powerful. Qian Pao also doesn't really gain or lose too much. I think it
yeah,
just um, Buddy Buddy Poffin, it continues to be strong. It doesn't lose VIP pass. And Greninja, I think, like you said, Greninja is a big threat in the next format. Getting him out quickly, um, and being able to snipe off the little guys, that those little guys that get established quickly, I think will be beneficial. So, um, it doesn't have results. I mean, you can see here in Fukuoka it didn't have results, but I think Qian Pao has a feature. Definitely has a feature with just the best Greninja deck in format. I think it's gonna have a feature.
yeah. I mean, I think the biggest benefit that that card gets from rotation is obviously no more path. So that's going to be a big benefit for it. I still think it's a good deck. And I still think it has. I mean, the unlimited cap on powers is always going to be a great benefit to that deck, and I think that's going to be something that's going to carry the deck on over the years, as long as it doesn't. When it rotates, obviously it'll be gone. But until then, I think just having that ability to just continue to just pour damage out over and over again every single turn, one of the few decks that can Oko Zard, right? I mean, what other deck can do that besides Orion Moon? Giratina, Chen Pao, maybe Goldango if you're able to get enough energy in hand. It's one of the few decks that can actually do that.
I do think the one problem, and it's the same thing I just quickly touched on before about old Roaring Moon and Dino Box is um, it's really dependent on supporter Pokemon. It's really dependent on your
Mm.
Baxcalibur, obviously, and if your Baxcalibur gets knocked out next turn, you're gonna need to either just get lucky and find all the pieces in your hand, Rare Candy and Baxcalibur again, or play Nirda. And when you're playing a supporter that you don't necessarily want to play, you're not playing boss, you're not playing Iono, you're not disrupting your opponent. You're sort of just trying to stay afloat. You're wasting your support, you're wasting your turn trying to stay afloat, keep that Baxcalibur up. And when there's so many options now to boss things up, and you have your counter catcher. If your opponent ever goes behind, they just immediately counter catch your Baxcalibur and knock it out. Or if they happen to have boss, they boss up your Baxcalibur and knock it out. And you're always keeping Chien-Pao on its back foot. That's why I think Chien-Pao never ended up getting amazing results because it's just so dependent on the Baxcalibur, which is hard to get out. And a rare candy deck, I don't think rare candy decks are bad. I mean, Charizard is BDIF and it's a rare candy deck. But once you have your Charizard out, it's Charizard. It's 330 HP. You're not killing it, but you spend all this time. You play your Irida, you get your rare candy, you get your Baxcalibur, you evolve it. You have to make sure you have a backup. Uh, Baby Baxcalibur out so that if it does get knocked out next turn, you can have something to evolve. If you don't, then you're completely screwed, and you're spending so much time balancing your bench and yeah, it's just a lot of moving pieces, and I never thought Shenpao was a good deck, to be honest. I think it's fraudulent.
Yeah, I mean, I never had any interest in playing it, but I thought it was a pretty good deck, and I think again it's still going to be okay. I don't know if it's ever going to win a regional in the next couple months here, but I think it's still a decent play. And I think being able to add that Iron Hands in there and just have that one of electric energy, being able to accelerate your water energy to take care of the rest of the energy cost, kind of makes it a little more versatile. It's not as streamlined. It's not as straightforward. It's not as linear is really the word I'm looking for here as some other decks. So
You know what I
we'll
think is
see. Who
actually
knows?
going to be the best Greninja deck in the next format? Goldango. I think
Hmm.
Goldango is underrated. I think 260 HP is a really annoying number to hit for a lot of decks. I think you don't need rare candies.
Yeah.
Um, you can play your 1/1 Palkia to power itself up, and it's a really good attacker to power up Greninja as a secondary attacker. And you have the same max HP output or the max damage output that Chen Pao has. Obviously, it's a little harder to hit. It's 50 times instead of 70 times, but um, 220. I mean, Chen Pao is just a liability itself as well. 220 is just really easy to hit, and
It is.
260
It is.
isn't.
Yeah.
Really easy. It's not a really easy number to hit. So I think hold on to your Goldango. I think it's actually going to come back around and end up being a good day.
I hope it does. I mean, right now my two deck lists are going to be Zard and Dino Box. Goldango is still there. He's still sleeve. He's still ready to go, but I haven't really dusted that one off in quite some time. So I think the last thing we want to jump on here before we move on to our Blaine's quiz, everyone's favorite game, nerdiest game in America, is the new Roaring, no, I'm sorry, not Roaring Moon, Blood Moon Ursaluna.
Blood
Now,
Moon
if
or
y'all
Soluna.
haven't seen this thing yet, it's interesting. I can tell you that much right now. So take Radiant Charizard and
Uh-huh.
now buff him up a little bit. Give him an extra prize card when he gets knocked out. Unfortunate, but keep everything else and take away that fire energy requirement. That is Blood Moon or Saluna in a nutshell. We can just go ahead and read the card here. Actually, I think you passed it up. It's a little bit
Yeah.
up ahead.
Did it?
First card it might be.
Oh, right here.
There it
Yeah.
is. Okay. So we have an ability here on this card. I believe it's called Elder's Technique. There it is. This Pokemon's Blood Moon attack costs one colorless less to use for each prize card your opponent has already taken. So again, every prize card your opponent takes one less colorless energy to actually use the attack. Blood Moon, 240 damage. This Pokemon can attack during your next turn. Doesn't really matter. Same thing with Zard. Super splashable. Doesn't require any specific kind of energy. It can be anything. You can throw this into Lugia. You can throw this into Lost Box. Whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. But on top of that, I think that the concept of having a two prize beat stick essentially, where you just take something out right at the end of the game, cool concept. But two prize cards, I don't know. Will, what do you think, man?
No,
Like I'm
this is
excited about
better.
it, but
This is better in every way than Charizard. First and foremost, Charizard, even when your opponent has taken five prizes, it still costs a fire energy. At the end of the
right.
day, minimum it's cost of fire energy. When your opponent's taken five prize cards, this isn't a this is a free attack. Just completely free. No energy. Not one colorless, not anything free. Then additionally, um, yes, it's two prizes, but again, if it's your last attacker, um, you doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's two prizes or one prize. You drop him at the very end of the game. You nest ball. You whatever. It doesn't matter if he's two prizes or one prize. He's hitting those same numbers at chart. Well, see, I do think they did balance it because it does 240 instead of 250, which means
Mm-hmm.
that even with a tool card attached, even with like Defiance Band, it's only hitting 270, not 280, so it's not getting those V stars.
Mm-hmm.
And that is interesting. Can't get a Lugia V Star at 280. Can't get a Giratina V Star even with a Defiance Band. So I think it is balanced in that way. But also, it's 260 HP. It's a basic that is 260 HP. This is the biggest a basics ever been. I think basics are kind of getting too big now. That's insane. We've gone from like
Mm-hmm.
220 being the base number now to 260 with a bravery charm with a cape of toughness. This guy's 360 HP. Like that's insane. That's unkillable. So even if you need to get him out early and you attach a cape to him, 360, like that's more than Charizard numbers. That's crazy. And even with a Bravery Charm, it's 310. I think it's just a very versatile card. It's interesting. Um, it's going to see play, and it's going to see play in a lot of decks because it's splashable just
Yeah.
in any type of deck. So it's just really interesting.
I'll be interested to see what deck has the most success with this because we talked about Lugia there for just a second, and you could technically use this thing early game, hit 240, take a quick knockout, and then super rot it back into the deck. You are losing a fair amount of energy off of that. But that being said, if you really need to get something happening right then and now, and you don't have your Minchino or Chinchino out for whatever reason, I guess that could work. I don't think that's an optimal way to play it, obviously, but again, super splashable card. Definitely something that's going to see a ton of play in a lot of decks. And I think more importantly, like you mentioned, it's a free attack at the end of the game. That being said, you have to get down to 5 prize cards. So you got to be a little careful with your math there. It's got to work out perfectly for that to
Or I
happen.
mean, or if it's four prizes, it's a one of any
Yeah,
energy
I mean,
cost, which is,
yeah, yeah,
that's really you just your attachment for turn, any color, and he's ready to go after four prizes.
yeah.
So
One thing I want to touch on here real quick, and this is me being a little greedy. If you can scroll down a little bit, there's an Applin card that got released in the same announcement
yes,
that no one
yes,
really cares about. But for me, I play Dragon in my GLC deck. This Applin is a really big deal, and there's a simple reason behind it. We've never had a Dragon Applin card. I think that the Pokemon Company, TPCI, is that what it is? Yeah.
yeah,
Um, intentionally printed this card. It's super squishy. It's 40 HP. It's got a decent first attack, but the Flapple that came out of Evolving Skies, I believe, says 70 damage for each Pokemon, your opponent's Pokemon with an ability. That's going to be huge, not only for Dragon GLC, but it's just going to be a huge attack in general. Obviously, it'll rotate. You won't be able to play it ever again. These cards will never meet one another with the standard format, but I'm super excited about this. I already proxied it. I got my reverse hollow flapple. Everything's ready to go. So everything that's coming out of the future, as you can tell, I'm starving for new cards. I do not care about anything right now. I want my new cards. I want to play my Applin. I want to play my Flapple. I want to play my Dino Box. I just want to throw that in there real quick.
no, very exciting for GLC. I mean, I do think they pay attention to GLC. Honestly, sometimes I think they're
Yes.
printing some
Yes.
decent cards for GLC. So very
I hope
exciting.
Mahomes is getting some kind of
A kickback,
kickback
yeah.
from that. Yeah, he has to, right? I mean, in a lot of ways, because I believe that format came out in 2020. 2020 was kind of a dark time for a lot of us, including, TCG. Like, it was popular, you couldn't find it anywhere. But I really think from a competitive standpoint, when there was no regionals, there's no locals, anything, GLC kept Pokemon alive. So
Yeah.
they will probably never acknowledge it, but Andrew Mahone deserves a lot of credit and I think is a very important figure in our community. So kudos to him for coming up with this format. You already, everyone listening, as they already know, we're GLC fans. We play regularly, so something I wanted to throw in there real quick.
Oh, he deserves it
All
for
right.
sure. So let's go.
Well, with that
Blaine's
being said,
quiz.
yeah,
Are
yeah.
you ready?
So
I'm ready to
it's my
stump
turn.
you. I'm ready to
I'm
stump you.
guessing this week. All right. So just to go ahead and break down the rules real quick for our listeners here and around the world, here's how it works. There's going to be one person who has a Pokemon pre-selected before we record, and there's going to be someone else who's guessing that Pokemon. You're going to have to just, based off a very simple Pokédex description, guess the name of that Pokemon. In addition to that, you get 3 tips. Tip one, what stage is it? Tip two, what generation? And the final tip there is what species. For each tip that you use, you lose 10 points. No tip, and you guess on the first turn, like Will did somehow with Rhydon a few weeks ago. 40 points right off the bat, and that's a huge lead. So, Will, if you're ready, I'm ready to lose a bunch of points. Here we go.
Okay, I'm ready. So here we go. It's Pokedex entry. They attach themselves to large-bodied Pokemon and absorb static electricity, which they store in an electric pouch.
Oh, okay, so I had something right off the bat, but the pouch threw me off. The pouch. So the first thing that came to mind was Joltik. Very small Pokemon, throws itself on a bunch of things and collects its static electricity, but I don't think that thing has a pouch. A pouch. I mean, Gen Oneer over here. I think a pouch. I think of Pikachu's little pocket things, but I don't. Read it to me one more time.
They attach themselves to large-bodied Pokemon and absorb static electricity, which they store in an electric pouch.
That sounds like Joltik, man. It really does, but I don't know. Electric. You know what? If I'm behind 40 points, I'm behind 40. I need to tie this thing up, or else I'm just going to get run over by next week. So we're going to lock it in. Is it Joltik?
It's Joltik. You got it first.
Oh,
Guess. We're even.
wow! I can't believe it. I'm excited about. I'm gonna go and throw that into our document right away. I can't believe that. All right. Before we were recording, you were saying, I think I got a good one today, man. I think I got you, and I was pretty confident that you got me, but I don't know what it
I thought
was.
the
I
pouch
feel like
would throw you off because I don't know what the pouch
it
is either.
did.
I thought the pouch would throw you off.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that thing is like smaller than my fist.
Yeah.
It's a very small Pokemon, so for that thing to have a pouch anywhere is I don't know. Is that even like autonomously possible? I don't know. But whatever the case may be, we're talking about fake things anyway. There it is. All right. Well, we're tied up 40 points each. In case you
Wow.
folks missed the last episode, I
I
encourage you to
guess
go
we're
back and
kind of
listen to it.
Pokemon fans. We're real Pokemon fans guessing it in one.
I guess so. But the thing is, I felt like I read that recently because I think one of our buddies, Peter, was messing around with his electric GLC, and I was just kind of throwing cards his way, and that card came up, and I was reading the text on the bottom right hand side of all these cards, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. He's a little guy, and he attaches
Wait,
himself.
is
So
Joltik a
for
viable GLC card? Is that a viable
I
card?
think the tarantula or galvantula, the
Galvantula?
evolution does
Yeah.
some kind of might even have like some kind of block ability or something. I don't remember exactly what it is, but I mean, you know how we are. We're just throwing cards around. Just, does that work? Does this work? And that was one of those cards I offered him. I don't think he used it, but whatever, it's fine. But regardless, it got me 40 points. So thank you, Peter. If you're listening, I appreciate you kind of just running through cards with me. Apparently, it worked out. So we're all tied up, 40 apiece. Next week, it's my turn to pick a Pokemon. It's your turn to guess, and hopefully, you have to use one of these tips here because
Oh
we
gosh.
haven't had to use a tip yet. So hopefully, someone can break this amazing streak we're on. So yeah. Well, before we say goodbye, I got one more question for you, Will.
Mhm.
We talked about a bunch of new decks coming out. What's the archetype you're most excited for? We already know mine already, but what's the one that's getting you out of bed in the morning on that day of release? And like, I need to pull that card
I mean,
today.
I'm just excited for new cards. Honestly, I still haven't decided on what I'm going to play because all of my decks are gone. Roaring Moon, uh, Miraidon. I mean, Dinobox. I don't want to steal yours. Dinobox is definitely the top of my list, but
Play
um,
it. Your
yeah,
match, yeah.
I'm going to build it. I will definitely build Dinobox. So I think that's probably my most interesting, the most interesting deck to me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's for me as well. I think the Iron Hands thing is really, really cool. Lugia, not necessarily a new archetype, but I think that's interesting. But yeah, Dinobox, pretty much everything about that deck is going to be new. I'm super excited about that. Like I said, I proxied and halfway built, so it's there. I'm ready to go. But I just want to kind of get your thoughts on it. For everyone else who's listening, if there's a comment section on whatever platform, whatever service you're listening to, drop that in the comments as well. What are you excited about for Temporal Forces? Is it Dinobox? Is it Future Box? Or are you sticking to something a little bit older? You're going to be sticking with the Charizard like I am. I don't know. Whatever the case is, drop it there in the comments. We're interested to hear what you got to say. We're very excited to get into the Temporal Forces format. It's still
It's
going to
only a
be a
couple
while,
weeks
though.
now. I mean, pre-releases I think are like March 10th. Even though
Yeah,
it
but
doesn't
I mean,
actually come out till the 22nd, pre-releases are soon. You'll have the cards in your hand in like under 2 weeks.
it releases the 22nd. So
Yes.
that's that's a long way still, man. That's
No,
like what, one,
but
two,
pre-releases
three?
are 2 weeks
Oh,
before,
yes, yes, yes.
so 14 days before that, which will be like the 8th or the 10th. You'll have your cards, you'll have Temporal Forces cards in your hand in like a week and a half. You'll have the cards in your hand in like a week and a half.
I have to do a good job of like I haven't pre-ordered anything yet because when I pre-order stuff, I tend to go a little crazy. So I'm trying to my one ETB and then buy singles. I'm trying to stick to that. But I'm excited about this set. I haven't seen any like the secret illustration rares or nothing like that. I haven't
Yeah.
really peeked into them. I don't know if they've been revealed, but if they have, might be time to do a little research and look into that. But Temporal Forces, March 22nd, folks. Go check it out. Go play your pre-releases. Support your local game shops and card shops and whatnot. It's what keeps our hobby and our community alive. So keep doing what you're doing and have fun while you're doing it. Well, with that being said, that's all we got for you today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode of the EXP Share podcast. We'll see you on the next one. Take care now.
Thanks, guys.